Welcome to the Discover Montcalm podcast, where we're going to take a look at the communities, the businesses, the attractions, and the people that make up Montcalm County. Here is your podcast host, Dwayne Weed.
Hello, my name is Dwayne Weed, and I'm the producer of the Discover Montcalm podcast. And I want to thank you for tuning in today. Back in 2018, I started Discover Montcalm as a documentary, and at that time I'd interviewed a number of people from around the county. Well, then the pandemic hit, and we all know what happened there. My documentary went down the tubes. One of those interviews was with Ralph Hauenstein, who was the Reynolds Township Supervisor from 1970 to 2005. So let's jump right into that interview. Here's Ralph.
Well, I had a neighbor in Grand Rapids, and his name was Lee Olsen. And he lived across the street from me. And I had heard that he'd moved up here and they had bought the knife company. So I thought I'll just stop in and see Lee, and I love to fish. So I said, Lee, I hear you're up here and so forth. He says, yeah, and I've got property on the Tamarack. And I know you like to fish. Would you like to fish? And I said, sure. So I fished the Tamarack. And one of the areas I fished was the area here by this property. And I caught a 5-pound brown, and I got to have that one. But at any rate, at that time, at CC, Constitutional Convention, the supervisors were also the people who ran the county. They were the county people. And so then they changed it back to 11 guys and so forth. But at any rate, my father said to me, he said, Let's get a farm. We always, as kids, we had a farm. My grandfather and grandmother had a farm, and we would go up there for homemade ice cream and picnics and all that, kind of ride the horses and milk the cows. So I looked in the paper, and I found this property for sale, and it was farmland, and it was unfortunately it was in the courts, because the fellow who owned it had owned a lot of money on it and so forth. So I contacted the attorney, and I said, I see your land is advertised. It was 80 acres with the farmhouse, 40 here on this side and 40 across. And she said, would you be interested? And I talked to my father about it, and he said, yeah, sure. And it had the house on it, and an old barn and privy and that type of thing. So at any rate, I said, well, Dad, what do you think you want to offer on this? He said, well, try $7,000. So we got the 40 acres and the house and everything, the creek and so forth, for about $7,000. That was the beginning. And then I was living in East Grand Rapids, and we had 5 children. And my wife was pregnant for number 6. So she said, we got to get out of this house. It's too small for a kid. So I said, well, let's look around a little bit. So we did, and the stuff was pretty expensive out there in Grand Rapids. So I said, hey, let's go up to the farmhouse. So I fixed it up a little bit, you know, and I said, let's try it. So we went up here for a couple of weeks. My wife said, I love it. The wild turkeys and the deer and so forth, this would be an ideal place to live. So I said, okay, I'll build you a house back on the creek. So we moved into the farmhouse, and we lived there about a year while we were building this house. So that kind of puts you up to about 1970, when I met Henry LaFonte, who was a supervisor here, and got to know him quite well, and his son-in-law, and got to know more people. And the town at that time was just a very friendly town. I remember we had a little brush fire here, and called the police, and they reported it to the fire department, and they were here and came, and they went through the woods and did all this, and they were just a nice bunch of people, and no bill or anything like that. They just put the fire out and turned around and left. But I thought, these are great people. I'm going to like it here. So that was kind of the beginning, and of course taking the supervisor job was a little different area that I learned all about. I went to a school that taught you how to do assessing, and then I took the exam, and I passed it, so I became a certified tax assessor.
You were approached to be supervisor. Could you walk me through that?
Sure.
And how Margaret said, oh, by the way, you also have to be...
Well, the board at that time was 5 people, and I can't remember all their names, but anyway, they asked me to attend the board meeting. And so I did. And then the question came up about Henry passing away, and they had heard about me and a recommendation from some of the people that I had met up here as a qualified person to perhaps handle this business. So that's how that all got started. And they called me in, and I took the job. It's only 1 hour a month. It turned out to be quite a bit more than that.
I kind of like the little bit about when Margaret said, "Oh, by the way," could you tell us that? Because we don't have any of that on. When you found out that it was going to be more than an hour a month, and what all that entailed.
Well, Margaret was a very smart woman, very capable woman, and I thought it was a good approach. She says, "You won't have any problem with this, but this is what Henry did. And if you need help, get a hold of the equalization director in Stanton and he will help you." So that's what I did. I took the job, and the equalization director at that time came out, and we went through the whole roll together, and he showed me what I should be doing and how to handle taxes and so forth. So that's how that all got started.
So you started as supervisor in 1970. What was Howard City like in that late 60s, 70s, as far as business, economics, that type of thing?
Well, they had the knife company was the biggest business, and that was Lee and his father. And his mother kind of ran that business. Well, they had a restaurant and bar in the corner, and that was a good place to eat. And they had a couple of places beyond that, down in the corner, where it used to be a drugstore, and then it was turned into a restaurant. I would catch lunch there and so forth. But everybody was very friendly, and you can walk down the street and say, hi Joe, how you doing? It's just a nice place to be.
The early years of you as supervisor, what were some of your biggest challenges?
Well, at that time, we didn't have zoning, and the county commissioners at that time had hired a fellow by the name of Bagby to set up a zoning situation for the county. So he did that, and as a result of that, the people came up, and a couple of fellows were in charge of it, but they didn't want zoning, so it was on the ballot, and it got defeated. Well, I spoke with Henry, he said, well, we got to have some kind of zoning here in this township. And I said, okay, well, let's put something together. So Al and I took the book that they had used for the county and changed it where it said county. We put township and kind of adjusted the wording and so forth to enact that zoning ordinance, because we really did need it at that time. Things were beginning to take off, and eventually the highway came in and property was selling very rapidly. So the zoning was a necessary factor. So we got it in.
The actual need for zoning was one of your biggest challenges. Did you have anything, what from a county government, local area, were some of the other challenges that you had at the time?
Well, we had a few businesses that were kind of dumping a lot of junk in here, and we tried to put a stop to that, but it was too difficult. We couldn't. So eventually we had to get a cleanup going. So that became the state paid for this whole process, and it was like $1.2 million to clean up what we called the paper company. They were hauling stuff in there, and they said it was just stuff they were using, and it wasn't. It was just garbage and a lot of other stuff. So that was very challenging, but we did get that done.
From the time that you started to the time that you walked away, what do you feel was your biggest accomplishment in that time frame that you can look back and say, I'm glad I was able to put my mark on this? What is that and why?
I felt as though the development of the whole township and the subdivisions that we had going and the different enforcements that we had protecting those had developed, and the value of the township had gone up millions of dollars from what it was when I took over. It was maybe 12 million or something like that, I think, and went up to 300 million. So we had good development. I mean, you don't necessarily see it just driving down the road, but if you look throughout our township and in some of the back roads and the subdivisions back there, there's some beautiful, beautiful homes. And it was very accessible from Grand Rapids. I think that's one of the primary reasons that it developed so rapidly. And we have such good development.
We hope you're enjoying our podcast, and we'll be back after we thank our sponsors. West Michigan Technology and Design Solutions, your IT and web hosting experts, westmichiganhelpdesk.com, and DW Video, your source for video production, websites, and your local videotape, slides, and 8mm film transfer specialist, dwvideo.com. Now, back to our interview.
So in the 60s, M46 went from gravel to paved.
That's correct.
131, Northland Drive, Federal, whatever, was always there, correct?
The old
The old
131.
highway.
Mm-hmm.
When did the appearance of the expressway, because at one point it made it as far north as M46. That was because it didn't go from Grand Rapids all the way to Cadillac immediately.
No.
So it came into Howard City at M46 at what?
Oh, I would say probably about 1975. I'm just taking a shot at it because I can't remember exactly, but
Okay.
yeah, I would say it was about 1975.
Is when it made it 246.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was what, the 80s when it went from there all the way to Cadillac?
Yeah, that was the next addition to the road, was from 46 north, because we had 46 coming from the east and hooked up with 131, and then of course went to Muskegon and what now is 82.
When Wolverine came to the area,
Okay.
that building, wasn't that deemed at one time a Renaissance zone?
It was, no, John Engler was the one that got that done for us.
Tell me, before that, what led to bringing some businesses in and how the infrastructure of what was set up early allowed that to happen.
Well, the Renaissance zone was very helpful because you had a tax break there, and I don't know how many years it was, but anyway, Wolverine decided that they wanted to participate in that, and of course they're the biggest company that got involved in it. Well, then it advanced into Pearson, and Pearson had some shots at it, and they have got Sitzma over there, which is the Turkey people, and so it kind of all gelled and came together, but it was a very good thing. I contribute to Franz Magdas, that one man, what was accomplished up here. And that's my own personal view.
And I want your personal view.
And his association with Earl Sederlet and these people, Franz was a great guy.
Franz brought through the Renaissance Zone, the community center, how MCC came over, and anything.
Well, Franz, with his knowledge and his influence of the business that he was in, is what really put this whole program forth, as far as I was concerned. And there were other people involved, but I think he's the fellow that I would like to give credit to.
What makes the Panhandle unique as compared to the rest of the county, in your opinion?
Well, when you look at the growth, and I'm talking about the retail growth, is the highways and the adjacent Grand Rapids, Rockford area, where people could go to work and get back here in 20, 25 minutes. That is, I think, the basis of everything here, as far as our growth is concerned, in retail, residential.
Yeah, because all my neighbors worked in Grand Rapids. Yeah.
I worked in Grand Rapids before the highway was in. I had business down there.
What do you see Howard City like today? What is some of the key to this area now?
Well, one that I was very, very proud of, got started, was the expansion of Hartman Park. It used to be just an area by the Tamarack and nothing else, and across the street was a swamp. And at that time we had people available through CETA. I don't know if you remember what CETA was or not, but they were paid by the government, and we could use them to get jobs done. So what I decided that we would get the board to help us do is to get behind that project and turn that into a pond and a park, which we did do. And the park has a little bridge over it. Now you probably have seen Hartman Park. And since we've done that, we've had innumerable weddings and receptions and kids, and it's just been a real godsend for us. And that was one event that I feel very proud about, and because I had a lot to do with it.
What do you see today that's happening that would not have happened without you guys back in the 60s, 70s, being forward thinkers? How are we benefiting today from what you guys did back then?
Well, I think you are, and I say we are because we had a team of people in Howard City. Number one, Mike Scott, who was the mayor for years, was very forward thinking, and he supported the fire department. At that time, Dave Germain was in charge, and the fire department expanded and did just great. And Mike Scott and the township, they got involved in everything, and Mike was involved in a lot of county projects. So they all work together.
You should put on a visionary hat. I know that you've always done that, but as you're sitting here today and you're looking into the future, what do you think Howard City will be?
Well, I still think it's a growth area. The building now is up. We had a slight setback several years ago in the residential area, but that's gone now. And we've had several subdivisions that were started and kind of set dormant for a little bit, but they're very active now and doing very well. So I see that growth, and I think the residential end of it is the part that's going to grow more so than anything else. We also are going to have a nice restaurant going in, the corner restaurant. We've got 3 people that have purchased that, and they're redoing it. So that'll be a big attraction.
Anything else that you can see visionary-wise of the area growing? You talked about residential's up because people don't want to live in Grand Rapids. They'll work there, but they want to live out where it's quieter. And we've got a lot of nice subdivisions.
Yes, we do.
Anything else that you might say, hey, visionary-wise?
Well, I'm getting along in years, so I've served on several boards, and you get a feel for what's really going on when you serve on these boards. And like for instance, mental health, I was on the mental health board, and that is growing by leaps and bounds. And I think there's a real opportunity in the mental health area to develop what they do in this particular part of the county. What develops this area primarily is the residential and the accessibility to working communities like Grand Rapids, Rockford, even Big Rapids. People who want to live in the country, people who want to have a garden, people who want to fish a little bit or hunt a little bit. There's a lot of people out there who want to do this, and that's kind of the growth area that we're in. And that's where you see it come from, are those people who are looking like I was.
Mm-hmm. Well, as soon as you caught that 5-pound brown,
it was done.
Connect and subscribe to Discover Montcalm Podcast at discovermontcalmpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Discover Montcalm Podcast. To be featured in an upcoming show, contact Dwayne at 231-250-9624. Remember to subscribe at discovermontcalmpodcast.com.